Good evening, Rabbi. Tonight we're assembled here to talk about one of the most fascinating things that we have in the Torah, which is the prophecies of Daniel. You know, I know you have a son named Daniel. So, who was Daniel? Just to give you a little background, right? Daniel was a prophet, first of all, obviously. He was alive after the destruction of the first temple. So between the destruction of the first temple and the building of the second temple, there was a period of 70 years that the Jews were in exile. This is the time that it took to finish the exile. So during that time, there was all kinds of, like kings. There was Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia. And then came after that Belshazzar and Evil Merodach, his sons, became the kings. And then there was the Persian kings, right? Dariavesh, Koresh, Achashverosh, all these kings that we had, the Persian Empire put up. So this is what happened. And then once that exile ended, the Persian, the Babylonian, and then the Persian also didn't end yet. They came back and they rebuilt the second temple. So at that time, what happened was that Daniel and three of his friends, Mishael, Azariah, and Hananiah, were also there. What happened was that they were recruited into the White House, to become over there the ministers, right? To become the Secretary of State, Secretary of this, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of the Treasury, all these things. These four Jewish guys were in charge of all that stuff. They were running the whole country, more or less, just like you have today. These Jews, in big positions. Also, at that time, it was very similar, even bigger. So what happened was that Nebuchadnezzar was looking for like the best Jewish minds to bring into his kingdom. That everything should be run well. Oh, have some Jews there. Some guys with yarmulkes, whatever. Some of those guys, right? So what happened was that Daniel was one of them. So Daniel was very revered by these kings, because he was a prophet and he had tremendous wisdom, so they were totally blown away by him, man. They're totally flabbergasted by his abilities, his wisdom, his holiness, whatever, all these things. So what happened was that Nebuchadnezzar had him in his kingdom, and then once the Babylonian kingdom was destroyed, he also was recruited by the Persian kingdom as well to work there also, to be a minister, to be a prophet, to be advisor to the king, all these things. He had very great power over there, almost unlimited, in those kingdoms. So what happened was that Daniel also, he was a prophet, he had divine inspiration. So because of that, there were certain prophecies that he brought to the world, dreams that were dreamt by the kings, because the kings also have prophecy, The problem is with them, with the kings, they get prophecy from God, but they don't know what it means, so they have to bring somebody to explain it to them, to interpret the prophecy. That's the whole thing, right? So what happened was that Daniel was in charge of that, to interpret the dreams of the kings. And also he had his own dreams as well. So there was all kinds of divinely inspired information going on there at that time. That's the idea. Just give you a little background, right? Who was Daniel? So what happened was that Daniel, he had many types of prophecies about certain things, but the most powerful prophecy that we find in Daniel is in the 7th chapter of the book of Daniel, in the 8th chapter. Over there, basically, he goes through the whole history of the kingdoms of the world. The biggest history lesson you could ever get. But not only it's history, we're talking about also about the future as well. We're talking about prophecy for the future. So this gives you a very big insight. If you read the prophecies of Daniel, it gives you a big insight into what's going to be in the future. How the world is going to go along, how it's going to progress, and what's going to be the end of all our suffering and all our persecution and all these things. Daniel was the one who came up with all these dreams. So the truth is, to understand them is very, very important, because it really gives you an understanding of what's going on in the world, the politics, the power struggles that are going on, all these things. What do they mean? What significance do they have? So if you want to understand them, what you do is you read the book of Daniel, and then it fills you in very, very well. So let's just go, and try to see what we can do. Limited time that we have to go through his prophecies and see, right, what we can find over here. So it says like this, right? Bishnat Chadab Belshazzar. This was in the first year of the king Belshazzar, who was the king of Babylonia. Daniel Halam. So he had a dream over there, Daniel. So what was the dream? He says like this, right? That I was looking at night. He says, in the visions, prophecy, and what happened was he saw from four directions, like battles going on, from four directions, and going towards the Mediterranean Sea, whatever, right? So he says, so what happened is he saw four creatures. He saw four beings, animals, whatever, shape of an animal. He saw them coming up from the sea, and showing up, and like all of a sudden, having influence into the world. So these were like four big creatures. So what do they represent? These four creatures, they represent the kingdoms that are gonna, dominate the world, right? So what do we have? The first one is Babylonia. That's number one. Number two, then we have the kingdom of Persia, right? As we said, Persia came after Babylonia. Then we have Greece, and then we have the last one, which is Rome, right? But just to put a caveat in there, Rome is also combined with a different kingdom as well. Rome is also together with Ishmael, with the Arabs, So we have like a dual kingdom going on. One part of the world is dominated by the Arabs, by the Muslims, whatever you want to call them, right? One part is by the Romans, which are the Christians. You know what I mean? So that's the way it works. So this is the four creatures that he saw coming up, and having influence in the world. So he says the first one was like a lion, he says, right? And it had the wings of a eagle. A lion with eagle's wings. That's what he says, right? So what happened was that as time went on in the dream, in the vision, he sees that even though this lion, was very powerful. By the way, this represents Babylonia. Nebuchadnezzar, who was like a lion, he was very powerful. He ruled over the whole world. So it says, right, in the end, what they did was they cut off the wings of the lion. So then it became like a mortal again, like a mortal animal. He didn't have those wings anymore, right? That's what he's saying. So what does that mean? What that means is that eventually this kingdom will die down, and disappear from the world. And that's what happened exactly, right? It lasted for about, let's say, 67 years, Babylonia, and then it disappeared, just gone with the wind, as they say, right? Who was the one who destroyed Babel? The Persians did. The Persians came, they threw out the Babylonians, and they ruled over the world after that. That's what happened, right? So this is the first vision that he saw. Yeah. And then, right, as we said, the first one is a lion. Mm-hmm. So then, now he says, I see a different creature, right? Different creature. Second one, and it looks like what? Looks like a dove. We know what's a dove? In Hebrew. Dove.
Yeah.
What's a dove?
The white.
It's a bear.
Right.
Dove is a bear. Yeah. So dove is a bear, right? So what does that mean? That the second kingdom, the symbol was the bear, right? And that's why they say Persians, their symbol is the bear. Mm-hmm. This is what it is. Who has by the way, the symbol of the bear today? The Russians. That's why a lot of rabbis say that they're the Persians of today.
Yeah.
The ancient Persians, today it's the Russians. This is what it is, right? Okay, interesting. So it goes on to say, and then also took over the world, right? And it was eating up, consuming, and he consumed a lot. What does that mean? That they had a great rule. They ruled over the whole world, the Persians. Pretty much just like the Babylonians, right? The truth is that who had a greater rule? The Babylonians or the Persians? They say the Babylonians even had greater rule. What does that mean? That the Babylonians ruled over the whole world without any exception whatsoever. Like every country, every province, every region, like with no exception whatsoever. The Persians, it wasn't like that. What does that mean? There were certain provinces that were like rebelling against them, So they ruled like over like 95% of the world or whatever. But that 5% was still on, a thorn in their side. So they weren't really as great as the Babylonians. Yeah. That's the way it is, right? Okay, very good. So it goes on to say, Batadana Chaze Habit Ve'aru Achari Kinamar. So it says after that, right, this one, now comes the third creature. Right? Kinamar. So what is the third creature? It's like a tiger, right? Nemar is a tiger. Namer. V'la gapin arba di'uf al gaba ve'arba rashin lechebata v'shartan yahivla. So look what it says, right? That this tiger was not like the tiger you see on YouTube, on the BBC. It's not like that one. What does that mean? Instead of having one head, it had four. Right, and it also had those wings again, right? And he was able to fly, and he had four heads, and he says the rule was given to that kingdom, to rule over the world. So what happened? What happened was that this represents the third kingdom, which was the Greeks, right? Their symbol is the tiger. So the Chazal say, why is there a symbol of the tiger? I mean, first of all, the tiger is a mighty animal, But the truth is, right, that if you really think about it for a second, which is the most mighty out of these three? We have the lion, then we have the bear, right, and then we have the tiger. Which is the most mightiest one? The lion, because even though the tiger is bigger and the bear is bigger than the lion, but the lion is more mighty. Like his heart is like, he just he loves to make war. He just he likes to fight. He has no fear. There's no fear by lions. It's like they just go, they don't know. The king of the beasts, that's what they call him, the king of the beasts, right? The bear is a little bit less than the lion, a little bit less. Even though it's much bigger, the bear. But, the lion is like more, mighty. Now, what about the tiger, right? The tiger is also pretty large, it's bigger than the lion. But the truth is, the tiger is not so mighty, like in terms of its physical, like, the heart, It doesn't have the prowess, like the might, the what do you call it? The confidence, that the other animal doesn't have that, super confident, super, mighty attitude. They're a little bit, flimsy, Once you start to fight with them, they start to get tired, They get worn out. They're not so mighty, like those two. Okay, whatever, I don't want to get into this too much, but why am I telling you this? Because it also represents these kingdoms, that the first one was the most mightiest out of all of them. That's why it's represented by the lion. Ruled over the whole world, without any exception. The bear is a little bit less, so, and then the tiger is also less than the bear. So therefore, right, the Greeks didn't have such a great rule like the Persians had. So the question is, what is the weakness of the Greek Empire? So the truth is, the Greek weakness is like this, right? The Greek Empire, even though was founded by who? By Alexander the Great. He was the one who founded that empire. So he was a very mighty king. He was also a very smart man, very intelligent man. So what happened was that he conquered the whole world pretty much. Alexander. But as time went along, his rule started to wane. What does that mean? That he had 4 sons. When he died, he gave his kingdom to 4 sons. And those sons split up, so it turned out to be like 4 kingdoms. So it wasn't really like a long-lasting one kingdom, the Greek Empire. It turned into 4 kingdoms. There was a northern, southern, eastern, and western. The kingdom of Greece. That's how it was divided. These were the 4 sons of Alexander that took over after he died. Right. So the Greek Empire was not as powerful as the Persians and the Babylonians, as we said, right? So nevertheless, though, right, and that's why it says, right, that it had 4 heads, this tiger. What does that mean? There was 4 provinces, 4 parts of the kingdom that got divided into 4. This is the whole thing, right? Okay, so let's go on a little bit. So it says like this. So now the 4th creature comes up, he says, right? I was watching this dream, this vision. Now all of a sudden the 4th creature comes up, right? So he says this one is like even the scariest out of all of them. You know what I mean? those three are pretty scary as it is. I mean, who's not scared of a tiger, or a bear, or a lion? What I mean? They're pretty scary. But this one is like the worst out of all. Very scary, very frightening. So he says, right, that this creature is a little bit different than the others, and we'll tell you why. So it says, first of all, as we said, right, very scary, very frightening. But then it goes on to say that it also had teeth. This animal, but the teeth were made out of iron. Like iron teeth. Remember that there was a movie like that? Do you remember that whole thing? I don't know. One of the those. I'm not gonna mention it. Okay, whatever it is. So anyway, and it says, right, that Rav Ravina Chla Medaka Ushera Beragla Rafsa. So what it did was, this animal, it like ruled over the world, but it also like beat down the kingdoms, like destroyed them, like just mutilated everybody. This is the Romans, that's what they did, right? They used to go in from place to place, like totally like mutilate the kingdom, and take it over. You know what I mean? That's what they did. They were masters at like manipulating these kingdoms, taking them over, and dominating them. So, so he says, right, that this kingdom, also, right, this animal that came out, as we said, it had like iron teeth. So what is that iron teeth? What does that represent? That like eats up everything. Like it just chews everything up. This is the idea. A lot of destruction, right? So it goes on to say, it also had 10 horns, right? This animal. Can you imagine? Like some animals have 1 horn or 2 horns. This one had 10. What does that mean? 10 horns. So the commentators say over here, the 10 horns represents the 10 parts of the Roman Empire, right? The 10 regions. So there are, amongst the Rishonim, amongst the early authorities, like different ways of explaining this. What are these 10 regions, of the Roman Empire? So like it goes like this, like some say it's like there's Ibn Ezra, there's others, or Sadia Gaon. Some say it's like it's Italy, Germany, like Eastern Europe, Poland, like Russia, like Slavic areas, all France, and Spain. These are the 10 horns that came up. This is the Roman Empire. You understand? So the Roman Empire was divided up into 10 kingdoms, and we're talking about those respective countries that existed in Europe. Those big countries that are still around today, right?
I was just going to say.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But they've been shifted around, changed around, here and there. You know how it is, right? Nothing stays the same.
Do they still count as those?
Of course, yeah. It's the same thing. It's just, it goes on. So, let's go on, right? It says like this. So he says, but there was one, like last one, one of those horns. And this one was a small one, like the other horns were bigger, this animal. This one is a small one, right? So it says, so what happened was that this horn came up last, like, the small one. So there's 2 different interpretations, by the way, who this horn represents. Some say it represents Titus, right? Titus, who was the one who destroyed the temple. Because he was, so they call him like a small horn, Why? Why is he so small? Actually, he was very successful. So the reason why they call him small is because he didn't, he didn't rule over the world with like military might. He was a schemer, a scammer, He used to go in, pretend like he's your friend. He would come in, oh, yeah, we love you, we love Israel. We love, this, we love that, right? All these kinds of things. And in the end, what he does, he stabs you in the back when you're not looking. So he was a schemer, this guy, So he didn't rule the world by military might. He ruled by, making scams, making, cheating, lying, conniving, scheming. This is what he did, He was a real politician, in other words. The modern politician. Same thing. a real Western politician. Okay, so that's what he did. That's why they call him small, because he wasn't really, he didn't really have like a mighty kingdom in terms of might. But he was a sneaky guy, He knew how to get in and sneak in, sneak out. That's what was whole thing was, claim to fame. Okay, so another thing he says over here, right, that his mouth spoke like very, arrogantly. This small one, the small fry. Right, so there's two different ways of interpreting this, by the way. If you're going to say Titos, we're talking about Titos, so then what we're saying is, right, that he spoke, as it says in Gemara, Masechet Gitin, once he went to the Bet HaMikdash, to destroy it, to destroy the inner room there, where, the Holy of Holies. So what he did was he took a prostitute in there, He was a very sick man, like, one of those Caesars, Caligula types, He was very sick. He took a prostitute in there, and he took a Sefer Torah, he wrapped it around, him and her, and he had like fornicated with her. Can you imagine? This is what he did. And then he burned, like he burned everything there. He burned the Sefer Torah, he burned everything. Psychopath, whatever. Person, anti-religious, like anti-God. Satanic, that's what he was. So what happened was that, but he spoke, like very, very powerfully. What does that mean? That he said, I defeated God, like he said, he's outright, he came, we defeated him. You know what he really thought? When he burned the Hechal, what happened was that the blood came out from there, So he thought like God was in there, and he killed them, because blood came out. Pretty sick guy, right? Pretty psycho. So what happened was that he thought he defeated God, so he spoke very, arrogant words. In the end, God punished him, right? Killed him in the end. That's what happened to him. But anyway, the point is, right, that he was a very arrogant man who spoke, with chutzpah, with the greatest conceit that a person could possibly have. Okay, so, but there's also another interpretation, by the way, who this little horn is. According to the interpretation, this little horn is somebody else. We're talking about Ishmael, what does that mean? That in the Roman Empire, there's also the wing of the Ishmaelim, the Muslim wing. Over there, the squad. We have that too, right? So we have a squad over there, right? And so those Muslims, they're part of that empire, even though they have a different religion, but they're like, integrated with that. It's one big mess, together. One big conglomeration of evil going on there. You know what I mean? So what happens is
Bush and the Saudis.
Yeah, exactly. You know how it was. Also Obama, he loved them. He loved those people. Yeah. Iran, it's the same thing. Right. So anyway, right. What we're saying is that we have a conglomeration going on between them. So this one, that little guy, who does it represent? It represents that, like that lunatic that they had. Mahmoud, whatever his name is, right? That lunatic was, like a very arrogant man, and he spoke, like very, big things as if he was like a holy man. Mm-hmm. Like he understood very big things. The truth is that he was a murderer. He was an adulterer also as well. He killed Jews, 600 Jews he beheaded. This guy, that's what they call their prophet. So anyway, the point is, right, that this is another interpretation of who this little horn is. We're talking about the Muslims, according to this. Okay, very good. Let's go on. So he says, right, that now he says, I was looking at all this, this whole scene. We have this four creatures, the four animals, right? So he says, so what happened was that Hashem came in the end. It says, like God came. He describes him like that, dressed in white, whatever, right? And he was like all light, and whatever, and all this shining. And he says there was many also angels that came with him, all kinds of his servants came with God together, right? So it's so he says once that great right, that little horn, as we said, that was talking arrogantly, as we said, right? According to one opinion, this is Titos. According to the other opinion, this is like Ishmaelim, So anyway, he says the point is, right, that that once that arrogant talk started to come out from that little horn, this is when Hashem, decided to like, step in, and destroy them, like obliterate them. That's the idea. So as we know, right, there's in the Gemara, Masechet Gitin about that. It talks about that, how Hashem punished, Titos, and he killed him in a very strange way, right? Some kind of a very, very unusual death. He died, very painful, very whatever. Okay, it's the whole thing there. But the point is, right, that Yivat lahon ad zman v'idveidan. So he says, then what happened was that all the other kingdoms, there was a certain time span allotted to them, to exist. As time goes on, they still exist today. That's pretty much what it is, right? So he goes on to say, so he says, so now he's talking, right, the what? That after these four kingdoms have been already punished, and put in their place, so then what do we see, right? He saw the kingdom of Mashiach coming in. Mashiach is the next one after that. So he says, right, that his kingdom will not be taken away. It'll last forever. That's what he says, right? He says, so what's going to be is that everybody's going to come to serve Mashiach, to serve him, to obey him, to go like his ways, go in his rule, and his kingdom will never be taken away. That's what he says. Goes on, it says like this, right? So now comes the angel who's like supervising this whole thing, this whole vision, right? And starts to explain to Daniel like what this whole vision meant. What was the meaning? We already explained it pretty much, right? What it meant. But now he's telling them, right? We're talking about four kingdoms that are going to be in the world, so forth, so on. This was, by the way, before all these things. Many of these things happened. Not all of them, but before many of them. So he says then, right? These four kingdoms are going to last a certain time. He explains to them this angel, but he says then the holy people will inherit the kingdom, right? What does that mean? The Jewish people. In the end, when Mashiach comes, the Jewish people will inherit the kingdom, right? And it's going to be forever. That's the idea. Okay. Goes on to say Daniel after that, right? It says, then I was shown also this fourth kingdom, as we said, right, which is Rome, and Ishmael also together with them, in one big shot. So it says, what happened was that he saw at a certain time of history where this. They made a battle with the Jewish people, right, and they defeated them. In other words, this fourth kingdom battled with the Jews and defeated them. When was that? During the destruction of the second temple. That's the idea, right? When the Romans destroyed the temple, right? So it goes on to say, so how long is this going to go on? So until Mashiach comes, right, it's going to go on, this whole thing. That, this fourth kingdom, which is Rome, is going to be in power. Okay, so now this was the first vision that he had, Daniel. Right? Now we have also another vision, which is coming up after that, which is even, perhaps even more, more shocking and more revealing. So now, right, goes on to say like this, that this dream already, as we said, it ended pretty much. So now comes the next one, right? Another dream, which was in a different time, but it's related to this one. It's a continuation, part 2, this whole sequence of events. So it goes on to say like this, right, Daniel? Next dream. This is already chapter 8. So it says like this, this he was now already in the Persian kingdom, because the Babylon was already destroyed at that time. This was in the future, right? So he says, I saw over there in Persia this vision, which also scared me. He says, frightened me very, very much. Goes on to say like this. So he says, what I saw like a ram, that was going and waging battles, east, west, south, north, and it was able to conquer them, right? And nobody was able to save them from this ram. So who are we talking about here? We're talking about Alexander the Great, right? Who was the Greek emperor that made the Greek Empire. What he did was he waged war in all four directions, and he won all the wars. He conquered the whole world. This is the continuation a little bit of what's going on. So then he says, so now, as we said, right, the Greek kingdom was divided into four pieces, though. Once Alexander died, it became four pieces. So then, right, what happened was that these kingdoms, since they turned into four, what happened was that there was constant war going on between them. As time went on, even though they were like four sons of Alexander, but they were not really happy, with each other. All the time wars going on, This is, by the way, documented in history. If you look at the Greek Empire, you see, right, there was always wars going on between two factions, There was Sparta, there was Athens, right? Going on fighting between them all the time. So what happened was that, in the end, the two major kingdoms that came out from that was the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The east and west were not so powerful. So who turned out to be the north and who turned out to be the south? The south turned out to be the Greek kingdom, that the original Greek kingdom. And the north turned out to be who? Turned out to be Rome. In other words, Rome was an extension of the Greek Empire. It was one of the four parts of the Greek Empire, and that became Rome. That's what happened. So in the north, these Romans who were descendants of Esav, they migrated from the Middle East, and they took over the Middle East over there. So Caesars were from Esav. That's what happened, right? So they started to fight the south, and there was constant wars going on between them. Like the Gemara says, Masechet Avodah, there was like 20 wars that went on, like 25, 30, whatever it was. A very, very great number of wars. Little by little, this became the whole epic of the world. The north, south. Sometimes this one wins, sometimes that one wins.
That's what's going on today.
You know what I mean? That's the way it was. This was like a war going on all the time. Constant war, So, it goes on to say, in the end, what's going to be is, right, that the Romans will be victorious over the Greeks. Mm-hmm. So the northern kingdom will become the ruling kingdom over the world. That's how it happened. Goes on to say like this. Right? So he says, once Rome took over the world, the northern kingdom, which was an extension of Greece, so then they start to fight with the Jews. Once, by the way, this talked about in the Gemara, Masechet Avodah. What it says over there is that the plan of the Romans was like this. They, first they wanted to defeat Greece. They had constant wars going on with them. So what they said was, let's make a pact with the Jews, make alliance, and they'll help us to defeat the Greeks. That's what they did. They made a pact with the Jews. The Jews were pretty strong at that time, so they were able to help them. So in the end, they also, by the way, wanted the holiness of the Jews. That was the whole thing, right? They wanted the holiness. They knew the holiness was going to be on their side, so therefore they could defeat the Greeks. Because otherwise they were not able to defeat them. They were fighting with them constantly, day and night, for years and years and years, non-stop. So what happened was, in the end, they said, let's make a pact with the Jews. The Jews will help us. Their holiness will help us. So that's what they did. The Jews made a pact with them, and they defeated Greece. So once they defeated Greece, says the Gemara, that's what it's talking about over here as well. That what happened was that now they had a pact with the Jews, with the Judaic kingdom. So what happened was that as time went along, about 23 years, 25 years, whatever it is, they broke the pact with the Jews. And they started to subjugate them, So that's what they did, like they would go from one to another. I'm finished with this guy, let me not take care of this guy, So the Jews, the problem was the Jews didn't know how to be careful with that. Why is that? Because they thought the Romans were on their side. They were aligned, you know what I mean? They were like partners, So they had like a very strong bond going on there. So therefore what happened was that Titus, the way he was able to go in, To defeat the Jews was to know everything about them, first of all, because the Jews told them everything. They thought, this is our ally, it's our brother, Esav, no problem, we're brothers. So, we can share the secrets with them. So therefore the Romans knew everything about the Jewish kingdom, you know what I mean? And this is the way they were able to defeat them. But not only that they knew everything, they also knew the weak spots. What does that mean? I'm talking about the political weak spots. Because at that time there was infighting going on amongst the Jews. A lot of rivalry going on. So because of that, they knew how to get in there, to take advantage of the rivalry between the Jews and to defeat them with the rivalry. What does that mean? To take one side, and defeat the other, play this game. You know what I mean? That's what they did. So there was at that time, who was ruling over the Jewish kingdom? That was the Maccabees, right? The Hashmonaim. So what happened was that at that time, there was two brothers from that family, right? The Hashmonaim that were fighting for the hegemony of Israel. They had a rivalry going on. Who's going to be president, right? This guy or that guy, right? Who cheated in the elections? Who brought in the false tabulations? Who made like a false program to steal votes? Who, whatever, all these things, right? They had a fight going on there. It was almost like a civil war, going on. Just like, we're talking about today. So what happened was that one of them decided, what he said? I'll get the Romans on my side and I'll beat my brother. So what happened was that these two brothers, one of them brings in the Romans, and the Romans helped him to vanquish the other guy. But what happened was that once the Romans helped him to vanquish his brother, then the Romans said, but now you owe us a favor, we helped you to get your rule. This was Titus, this was a strategy. So what they did was now they said, you got to do us some favors also, you owe us, so time for payment, you got to pay. You know what I mean? So do this for us, do that for us, do all kinds of domination, all kinds of things, right? So that's how they did it, you know what I mean? They took one side, they defeated that side, and then they said, now we defeated the other side, so now you've got to do what we say because you owe us, we helped you, otherwise you wouldn't have been able to be victorious. So this is the way the Romans came in, and destroyed the Jewish kingdom at that time, the Second Temple. With this sneaky behavior, conniving, behavior, that's what they did. So they're playing politics, in other words, right? The usual politics that we see today. So what happened was that this is the reason why they were able to destroy the Beit HaMikdash. So it goes on to say, and then they destroyed the temple. That's what they did, right? This was a culmination of the domination of the Jews at that time, the Romans. They destroyed their temple. So it goes on to say that they succeeded, even though they did very wicked things, even though they did very wicked deeds. They subjugated the Jews and they burned their temple. They succeeded. So asks, right, Daniel to this angel who's giving him this vision, how long is this going to go on? This exile of the Jews. How long is it going to be? Right? So here it gives them some signs, like how long actually it's going to go. How many years it's going to go, how many centuries, whatever it is, right? The truth is that we don't know how to decipher these verses. We don't know exactly what they mean, So there were some rabbis, by the way, who tried to decipher these verses and tried to figure out, how long exactly the galut, the exile will last. So there, there was like this kind of prediction, that kind of prediction. There was all kinds of rabbis who did this. Also in the Zohar Kadosh, by the way, we see that it predicts all kinds of things. But Zohar Kadosh is talking about very specific things. You have to understand the depths of the Zohar Kadosh to understand what it's talking about. Because it talks about over there that according to Zohar Kadosh, the Geulah, the redemption of the Jewish people, really started to happen like 500 years ago. How is that 500 years ago? Because the truth is, if you look 500 years ago, what was going on at that time? There was a time that the Jews came back to Tzfat, the holy city of Tzfat, in the north of Eretz Israel, and they founded over there the Torah community, which was Maran Bet Yosef, the Arizal, right, Rav Alkabetz, and the Al-Shich, and all these big rabbis who were there. That was the beginning of the redemption of the Jewish people. What does that mean? They were returning to Eretz Israel, even though it was small numbers at that time, but nevertheless they established over there many things regarding Torah, regarding Halakha, all kinds of things. So the truth is that the Zohar Kadosh says that this was the beginning of the redemption. In a sense, it's very, very true. Why is that? Because this was a time that, even though it was a very small movement, But this was a time where the Jews started to come back and to build a community and the Torah community and to grow in Torah and mitzvot and so forth and so on. This all happened 500 years ago in the holy city of Tzfat in the north. That's exactly what occurred. Okay, very good. Let's go on a little bit. So he tells them exactly how long it's supposed to take. But he's using very vague words that we don't have to decipher. So then he goes on to say, now he brings an angel, right, Gabriel, to explain what all this vision meant that he saw now. You know? So now he tries to explain to him this vision. So he tells him, so he says, I'm telling you right now, I'm notifying you, tells him the angel, that there's going to be a lot of anger, a lot of battles, a lot of wrath going on in the world at that time, towards the end of days, when Mashiach is supposed to come. So he says that, so he says that ram that you saw, with those horns, those are the kings of Persia. That they were conquering the world at that time. Safir, and then the goat that you saw, Sa'ir, right? Those goats, Hamelech Yavan, that was the king of Greece. And that big horn that you saw in that dream, it says that your vision, right? Asher ben Anav, who Hamelech Harishon. This is the first king of their empire, right? This goes on to say, so who's the first king that he's talking about here? So he says, we're talking about Alexander, right? The Great, as we said, right? That's the first king of the Greek Empire. Okay, so then he goes on to say, so it says, towards the end of their kingdom, there's going to come up a king, right, from that empire. We're talking here about the Roman Empire already, because, as we said, the fourth empire of the Greeks was the Rome, came out of there. So what happened was, he's talking about Titus now. He's telling you, right, that there's an arrogant, very, very blatantly arrogant person coming out of that kingdom. This is Titus, right? Who, and he also, right, the person who understands all kinds of, riddles, like he has wisdom, certain level of wisdom, whatever. So it goes on to say, so he says he's going to be very strong, but not with physical might. They're not going to destroy with physical might. But he's going to destroy the Jewish country, Judea. Why is that? Because, as we said, right, he did all kinds of political wheeling and dealing to do it. Not physical might so much. That was Titus. Goes on to say, ועל שכלו והצליח מרמה בידו ובבבו יגדיל ובשלווה ישחית רבים ועל שר שרים יעמוד ובאפס יד יישבר. So he says that he succeeded by using his tricky schemes. That's the idea, right? Yeah. But in the end, he says it's going to be broken, right? What does that mean? In the end, as we know, right? Titus was broken. And he died from a very terrible death. ומראה הערב ובבוקר אשר נאמר אמת הוא ואתה סתום והחזון כי לימים רבים. ואני דניאל נהייתי נחלתי ימים וקום ועשה. Goes on to say בשנת אחת. Okay, so by the way, here also there's an allusion to this whole thing which happened in the second temple, which was these disciples of Yeshu, and what they did. His whole group that they had over there, right? His his cult that he had over there, that Christian cult, is also alluded to here. So what does that mean? That these people are going to try to, like it says over here, they're going to try to come up with some kind of a vision, some kind of a new idea, some kind of a new plan, right? The New Testament, as we said, right? Something like that. They're going to try to do that, but they're going to fail. What does that mean, right? In the end, it turns out that they're not really, right? There's no Messiah there. There's no salvation. Nothing really good came out of all that, the whole thing, right? That movement of Yeshu and his followers. It was all one big mess. Nothing really good came out of it. They said, he's the Messiah and he's going to save us, and there's going to be salvation, and we're going to be saved from the Romans. It all didn't come to fruition in the end. all these things, right? Whatever they tried to say. And also they said all kinds of prophecies, all kinds of predictions, and they also never came true, right? By the way, you should know that the reason why the Jewish religion is really the right one of the reasons, you know why? You know how you can tell? Very simple. We're the only religion that the prophecies of the Jewish people have come true. If you look in the prophets, the Jewish prophets, all the prophecies that they made came true. And there's still more to come, obviously. But what I'm saying is that there were so many prophecies already that came true from the prophets. But they don't have such prophecies like this. When it comes to the other religions, what prophecies do they have? All what they have is they stole from us some things, they regurgitate those things and to try to say them in their own way. But really the truth is that there's nothing new there. Right? It's all regurgitated stuff that they took from us. So the bottom line is, right, that he was shown all this history, that Daniel, the prophet, what does this all mean for us, right? That we have to wait till the salvation comes. We have to wait till HaKadosh Baruch Hu saves us, because the kingdom, the fourth kingdom is going to be prolonged. That's what it says over here in these verses, right? It's going to go long. And there's going to be like 10 phases, 10 countries, 10 parts of the kingdom, one taking over from the other, right? We had Spain, we had Portugal, we had France, one took over England, right? We have all these phases of the Roman Empire. It's all Rome, all these empires. They're all parts of the Roman Empire. So what happens is that each one takes over, one from the other, until in the end, you know what it says in the Midrash, right? It says in the Midrash that in the end what's going to be is, Kadosh Baruch Hu, when he brings Mashiach, the king of Rome they'll still have a king. They'll still have a president, whatever it is, right? So when he sees that Mashiach came, the king of Rome, you know what he's going to do? He's going to come and bring them a gift, a matana. He's going to come and say, oh, you finally came, Mashiach. Okay, let me bring you a gift. So even he's going to admit that Mashiach is the real king, and he's the one that we have to follow. So if he's going to admit, all the more so, right? Everybody else should admit it as well. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, amen, amen. Thanks for coming. Chazak Baruch. Blessings, wealth, health, happiness, and victory for our president. Amen, amen. Chazak Baruch.
I like these, it's exactly what's going on now. I'll be honest with you, very similar.
About one of the most